Okay, folks, welcome back to EHour, welcome back to Friday, welcome back to Fun Times. Coming here today, all the way from a couple miles down the road on Central Campus, our sister school over in Ross, is a good friend of CFE's. He's been a friend for a long time, very supportive of our work. To say he's a leading thinker in marketing and advertising and culture is a bit of an understatement. He's kind of a guru. He's a chief strategy officer for a leading advertising firm in New York. In addition to being a full-time prof here at U of M, he's crafted contagious campaigns for brands that you all know and love, including the Brooklyn Nets, State Farm, and the like. He started his career, though, doing none of that. He's doing music and technology. How do you wind up from music and technology to doing advertising? Well, we're going to find out a little bit today. He also co-founded a startup before he was working on iTunes at Apple, Nike initiatives, digital strategy for some small artist that's named Beyonce. I guess she's made a thing or two in this world. He's a Detroit native. He's got his PhD from Temple University and his MBA from the best place in all of the state here in Ann Arbor. Please give a warm welcome to my friend Marcus Collins. Hey. Good to have you here.
It's great to be here. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. I'm warmer in here than it was outside.
Good grief.
Yeah.
You think we live in a tundra, considering what it looks like today. But it's all
You know, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's good in here. It's warm. It's a good environment to be learning in, right?
Indeed.
Okay, first and foremost, let's give the students a little bit of understanding about your background. What's the 60-second pitch on how you got to where you are?
Ooh, 60-second pitch. I got here through serendipity, a little randomness, and a bit of luck,
Okay.
I would suppose. I'm from Detroit, born and raised. I always start there because I feel like I'm a product of the city. I did well in math and science. And in those days, if you did well in math and science and you were black for sure, you're going to be an engineer. So I studied engineering. I did materials engineering actually here at the University of Michigan because I was really fascinated with polymers. And I thought that just like carbon chains were really cool. You know, they come together, they create things. And I don't know if I would say polymers are cool today, but I thought it was a cool idea at least. And through a series of unexpected but life-changing events, kind of inflection points, I find myself in a place that I never imagined I would be.
Okay, well, let's just pull the curtain back on that a little bit. Let's go back to these undergrad days, material sciences and polymers. You didn't go into that. You didn't say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go work in Midland for Dow or the like. You decided to do something a little bit different. What was the pivot after you graduated, or maybe while you were still a student?
So my first year in school, I thought that this was what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be serious about your career, going into college. I really liked music. Like that's what I was really excited about. But that was an extracurricular activity that I did to make sure that my resume looked good when I applied to school. So when I got here, I was like, all right, it's time to focus, time to be a grown-up and go into engineering. And I just didn't do really well. I didn't really love it. Honestly, I just I was like, I don't think this is for me. And I came home that summer and said, Mom and Dad, I don't think I want to be an engineer. And my mother was like, well, wait till you get into your major, you'll love it. She's an academic, so I was like, I trust my mom. Okay, great, I'll do that. I didn't love it. When I came back, I was like, yo, this is not for me. And I ended up taking some music theory courses just to offset my terrible GPA. And I fell in love with major sevenths. And I was like, oh my goodness, it just felt familiar. It reminded me of like Stevie Wonder, but it also felt like new and novel. It was my first time as an adult being excited about learning. And I came home that summer, after my sophomore year, said, Mom and Dad, I know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to be a songwriter. And they said, oh, no, you don't. That is not
From engineer to songwriter, that's a common path.
That was not going to happen. Yeah. They were not feeling that at all. So I came back to school and finished my engineering degree, but spent all my time at what was called the Media Union then, but now it's called the Duderstadt. I spent all my time in the recording studio there. I took all my electives were over in School of Music, doing performing arts technology, which is their trajectory for non-instrumentalists. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish this engineering degree, give the degree to my parents, and I'm going straight to the music industry. I graduated right after 9/11. The market was just abysmal, just terrible. I was like, oh, this is the divine sign that I was meant to do this music thing. So I went to go work at Universal Music Group, helping put artists in the world.
Students, show of hands, how many of you changed your major since you've been here?
Not
Okay.
that many, actually, surprisingly.
How many engineers have we got in the crowd today?
What up, engineers? What up? What
There
up?
they are.
What
There
up?
they are. Okay. So, pivot. I'm not going to do this. You do something different. You go into songwriting.
Yeah.
That early experience in songwriting teaches you what?
So it teaches me that I wasn't that good of a songwriter. So I ended up running a studio for one of my professors in the School of Music. He had a studio right on the other side of 94 off of State Street. It was his second studio, so I ran that studio. And when the paid sessions were over, I would record my own stuff. I called my friends from Detroit, like, come through, let's record. And I was essentially developing a sound. And I would go to New York and pitch music, and like it wasn't really happening. So I tapped a buddy of mine who also was a Michigan alum. He did industrial operations engineering. And I convinced him to start a company with me. And I was like, you do all the business, I'll do all the product development. I'll do all the music side. And he and I would go to New York every month, pitch music. And he was great. He was really, he walk in a room and the room would light up. And it's like, that's the guy I want to work with. I trusted him implicitly. So we started this company. All the artists that I were developing, that I was like recording with my friends, we signed them as artists. And then we recorded music. We go to New York and pitch it. And we got some remixes, did some stuff with D12, who's Eminem's.
Yeah, you and I know, but
collective.
yeah, right.
D12 is this group that Eminem was a part of.
They didn't make it as big, but they were there hanging around. Yeah.
So I did a remix with D12, John B, who was a big R&B singer at the time,
Yep.
Miss Dynamite, who was a big artist in the UK at the time, was making her way over here. Just minimal things, nothing massive. In the scheme of things, it wasn't a terrible success, but we were making money, which was nice. And I realized that what was working for us wasn't sustainable. Because while we were pitching music and getting placements, we ended up recording an album with the artists that we were developing, and that album allowed us to connect with brands who enabled us to connect brands with other artists. And our business went from being a record label to like a partner marketing firm. That is, we were helping brands connect with artists, local artists in a particular region to do music activations, and we'll take a cut. So our entire business, which I didn't know at the time, was essentially arbitrage.
Okay.
Right? We'll connect brands who didn't want to spend a lot of money on music with artists in a local region that we had connection with, and that was the business.
Okay.
And it was doing really well until it wasn't, thanks to the digital disruption of music.
Okay. All right, students, pause. Time out here. Some of you might be thinking, it's everything about marketing. It's everything about advertising. This is an entrepreneurship class. He's also a founder. The notion of why Marcus is so great to have here today is because when you think about our entrepreneurial mindset that we're learning about and those factors in the middle there, he just touched on one, opportunity identification.
Yeah.
Talking about seizing the moment and seeing that there's a place there for a business to be created as a service entity between these two.
That's right. There was a point of friction there. There were companies that wanted to be a part of music but not spend a ton of money. They would call record labels that would just hit them over the head with a premium to get access to their artists. And we're like, hey, look, why don't you just activate artists that are big in their region and you'll still get the same sort of effect. And that worked out really well for us until the industry got disrupted. And big record labels were looking for where they can get as much margin as possible. So the checks that were too small for those labels a year earlier were just fine for them. And as a result, we got cut out of the market.
And your career gets disrupted.
Exactly. So the business is basically...
What year are we talking about
this
here?
This is 2006.
Okay.
Right, so 2000...
Before the recession.
Right, exactly. So 2006 or so. And I go, oh man, this what we did before to get the modicum of success that we had wasn't sustainable, wasn't replicable. And we thought to ourselves, one of us should probably go to business school to figure this out. Because we're both engineers. We didn't take any business school courses. Didn't know anything about business. Everything was just all instinct. So I decided to go to business school to figure it out. So I came here to Ross to study strategic brand management with a focus on digital.
Okay.
And it was at that time that I ended up getting a gig at Apple, which was great. Right, so I'm running partner marketing for iTunes. Now this is 2008.
Okay, so this is like big opportunity ahead.
Exactly.
Who could have even thought?
I'm learning from the people who are actually led the disruption. It was great. Like it was a master class, and in how to reframe, reimagine an industry, and how to ultimately turn it on its head. So I'm learning this, and as I'm learning this from my business school acumen and actually being at Apple, like I'm realizing all the pitfalls of our business, why it didn't work. Like why our business were built on being a middleman, arbitrage, the first thing to get cut out. Like all these things that I thought was like, oh, this is great, this is working for us. It was not sustainable, and we didn't have a real core competence that enabled us to be much more vulnerable to disruption. So as I'm learning these things, I'm like, okay. Rethinking like, so if I want to stay in the music industry, what's the best way to do this? And at Apple, I felt like we were so far down the value chain being the retailer, the store, iTunes, and I wanted to do much more than that. I said, you got to find a better way. And I thought I want to be much more upstream where the art is happening, where the content is being created. And at the time, I ended up meeting Matthew Knowles, who was Beyonce's father. And he goes, let me get this straight. You're an engineer, start a music company, you have an MBA, you work at iTunes, and you're black. Like, dog, you don't exist. Like, who are you?
You are the unicorn.
Exactly. I'm like, no, I do. I'm Marcus. And he says, you should run digital strategy for Beyonce. And I go, I think I should do that. It's a good idea. So
let's touch on that for a second.
Yeah.
So you've talked before about the notion of feeling like a black sheep and feeling like, okay, I don't fit here, I don't fit there, I don't fit anywhere. You meet him, he says this to you, and this is a moment of affirmation?
1,000%. It's one of the first times that I felt like the intersectionality of my identity and my experiences, which used to make me feel like an outsider, was really working to my advantage. I felt as though he was one of the first people to see my potential in all of the complexity and one would argue heterogeneity of my career. That he saw how these things all fit together and say, that is a very unique thing. You could bring so much value to the company.
Now that you're so far beyond that moment in time, that inflection point, if you're putting yourself back in their shoes,
Yeah.
and you're that age again, you're going through that moment with him, what is it that you now realize, wow, I should have been looking for blank all along. If I would have been searching for or really honing in on blank, I could have had that moment earlier in my career, maybe at Apple or when you were working with the company.
Well, two things come to mind. I think that if I were to go like transport myself back to where you all are, I think I would have been taking much more inventory on where are my strengths and where are my weaknesses. I think that I was of the mind that where I'm weak, I'm just going to like work harder to be stronger at that, which is a valiant endeavor. But I think I should have focused on is, what am I strong at and how do I get stronger at that? Which gets to the second part is that I wish I was better at telling my story. I kind of talked about what I did, but I didn't have a very clear sort of North Star as to why I did it. And my story then was I was an engineer turned musician. Okay, I guess that's interesting. But there was nothing that really guided it other than I wanted to write music. And once I was writing music, all my narrative was what I used to be.
Okay.
There was nothing about the manner in which I wrote music, the stories that I told, where I sat in my process of creation that made me unique or different than anyone else who was writing music. There was nothing. I didn't have the story that invited people in to see themselves in me and want to know more about me.
Okay. In between all of that, there's an interconnecting tissue that you talk about, and I love the way that you talk about this. Define what passion is, because there's passion that brought you to music out of engineering. There's passion that kept you in music even when it otherwise was difficult.
So we often say and this is definitely the source of debate and discourse. People say you should follow your passion. And some people say, yes, follow your passion, because if you're passionate about it, then you'll work hard for it and you'll feel intrinsically rewarded. On the other hand, people say don't follow your passion, because just because you're passionate about it doesn't mean you'll make money from it. Doesn't mean you'll be successful just because you're passionate about it. And I sort of sit on the former side of it, that the reason we have the debate about passion is because our understanding of passion is more colloquial than it is actual. So the word passion actually comes from the theology literature, from the religious literature. Passion means suffer, like the passion of the Christ. It means suffer. So when we talk about what are you passionate about, what we're really saying is, for what are you willing to suffer? And for me, I was willing to suffer to be a musician. And trust I did. I was willing to put in the work. I was willing to have my dreams be deferred in many ways. I was willing to face a lot of rejection. I was willing to be sort of not traditional, to be socially deviant, all the things that kind of come with it. I was willing to suffer for it because I believed in it, right? And I was in that idea of being passionate through that lens. You go, oh, so am I willing to suffer for this thing? If I'm not, don't do it, right? So if you're an entrepreneur or you have an idea, and it's like, if you're not willing to suffer for this idea, then don't do it. Because the things that are worth having, the things that are novel, the things that are counterintuitive, the things that break the dominant logic, they are by their very nature going to have a bunch of resistance against it, because it's new and novel and people don't have a sort of schema for it to make sense. So when you talk about it, you're like, that is dumb. What are you doing? Why would you ever do that? Right? They won't get it, because if they got it, then it wouldn't be novel.
Life's going to make everything hard enough on you already. If you're not doing something you're passionate about to the point you're willing to suffer for that, you're going to lack the energy consistently to trudge ahead in your career and go through those hard times.
Exactly.
So one of those hard times comes when you're working for the Beyonce team, when you're working for Mr. Knowles. And at that point, you have an experience of failure that you haven't had before. Let's talk a little bit about that. Tell them that story.
So my job is to run digital strategy for Beyonce, and a part of that job, a part of my remit is...
Where's Beyonce at this point? Like, what are we talking about?
That's a good framing. This is 2009. So now we're talking about I Am Sasha Fierce, Beyonce. This is Single Ladies, put a ring on it. It's that time.
Okay.
And
High
it's
times.
important to have that framing, because she's not Queen Bee yet. Like, she's still Beyonce the artist. She's a huge artist. She's a mega artist, mega star, but she haven't quite transcended to the consecrated icon status that she is now, right? And so I had like a front row seat to see that transition happen, which is amazing. So part of my job was taking her offline fan club and bringing it online. This is, again, 2009, so you got Facebook, you got Twitter, easy. In my mind, easy. And we were so confident about this thing that we created her temple, if you will, her home on the interwebs, and we actually called her fan club the Beyontourage. That's a terrible name, I know. But at the time, the show Entourage was big.
Sure.
It's a terrible name. Anyway, so we launched this thing, and it's a failure. Relative to her stature, it's a failure. It's a party no one shows up to, relative to her celebridom. And I am nervous. I mean, this is a failure, full stop.
Because you're owning it. I mean, it's on you.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, hey, Mr. Digital, what's happening here? Not good. So the team starts to scour the internet to kind of see what's going on. Like, are people talking about it? What's happening? And in doing so, we stumbled upon this group of people that called themselves the Beehive. And they weren't just fans of Beyonce, but they saw the world the way Beyonce does. I mean, Beyonce as a person, and ergo as an artist, as a brand, believes in women's empowerment. Like, everything we know about Beyonce is all about, it's all about pushing women forward. It's a certain brand of feminism. And that's what she stands for. And these people saw the world similarly, and they use her music as cultural production to communicate that, to express that point of view. They had their own language, they had their own artifacts, they had their own behaviors, And I was like, yo, collectively, we said like we should cut bait on this nonsense that we had called the Beyontourage, and let's just partner with them. And the Beehive became the official fan club of Beyonce. And I always go back to that story, even to today, because my biggest learning was my biggest failure. And at the time, and that was a massive, colossal failure. I thought I was going to get fired.
But you weren't. Because talk to us about what Mr. Knowles said to you that was such an aha moment, an epiphany about what it's like to fail.
I think that there are two things. One, Matthew, Beyonce for that matter, and the team was encouraged because what we were trying to build was already established. And that was the learning for me. When it comes to people, when it comes to communities, you don't build community. You don't manufacture community. You facilitate community. People find each other, people who see the world similarly, who have a certain frame of the world, people bump into each other organically because they see the world similarly. And the idea then, as a company, institution, organization, in this case, artist, brand, your job then is to facilitate those connections, to bring more people to the fold, to sort of lubricate the social ties, to create more serendipity for them to bump into each other and come together. And in doing that, that's how you grow the community, right? And that, I never thought of it that way. I always thought about people as audiences, right? Like you all, an audience, a group of people just sort of waiting for messages to wave over you, right? But that's not how we walk through the world. Like we are extremely active. We're extremely engaged in the world. There's millions of things for us to do on a daily basis. We have a sort of checklist of things to do's every day, right? We're not waiting for messages to wave over us, right? Messages have to sort of disrupt us to get our attention. And in that case then, if people aren't passive, people are extremely engaged, they're extremely active in the things that matter to them, and then they go find people like themselves because we are social animals by nature. Therefore, the opportunity to engage people in community is to facilitate and contribute to their community.
Does Marcus Collins, the cultural expert today, exist without a moment where you're taught that you failed, but we're not going to just fire you and kick you out because you failed? Learn from that, don't repeat it, and go do better on the next one.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, like my biggest learnings all came from failure. You know, like even, you know, being a student here, realizing that I was not doing well in the classroom, realizing that I wasn't feeling intrinsically inspired, that was a failure. I mean, I chose a route that I thought was going to be the route for me, and in doing so, it wasn't doing it. That was a failure. Now we're like, okay, this is the thing. What thing actually fulfills me? Right? What wakes me up in the morning? I found music. Great, awesome. And then pursuing music as a songwriter, like I failed. Like I wanted to be Babyface meets Pharrell Williams. That didn't work out. Right? Massive failure. From that, I pivoted. It's like those inflection points came because of failure. The work on the Beyonce side, like my understanding of community today, my understanding of people, of how people come together. I wouldn't even be in the space of studying culture, at least not through the frame and the lens that I do now, if I didn't have that experience.
Which part of that experience is you putting yourself out there to embrace risk, to take on risk, and to go ahead and put yourself in a position to potentially flop. For all the students here who are in a position to where they maybe feel like they've never failed, risk is too scary. Play it safe. The world's going to end up being tough enough on you. Better to do what you know.
Yeah.
What's your advice for embracing risk? What's the muscle to build on that? How do they do it?
So I would start with the logical part. To not take risk means that you're going to go the path most followed, right? Like I'm going to be textbook mediocre. I'm going to be average. I'm going to be normal, but not taking risks. This is the way people go. This is the less risky route to go, so I'm going to go that route, the normal route, the saturated route. And as a result, then, your results at their best will only be mediocre. At their best, your results will only be average because that's the route you chose to take. Now, in that pursuit of mediocrity, and that's what it is. In that pursuit of mediocrity, there's tons of people fighting over the same resources of mediocrity. So even going that route is a risk. In fact, if we look at this statistically, it is the most riskiest way to go. Think about the diffusion curve. This is entrepreneur, of course, so we talk a lot about the diffusion curve, right? Everett Rogers' diffusion curve, which is also known as the Gaussian curve, also known as the normal curve.
Quick explanation, if you don't mind, for those students who are still new to it. No, after you.
Oh, yeah. So there's a guy named Carl Gauss. He's a mathematician in the 1800s, and he postulated this phenomenon that you know as the bell curve. You know the bell curve, yes?
Show of hands. Yes, you know the bell curve.
Do you know the bell curve?
Thank you.
Okay. It's just rude. I asked a question.
Take a risk. Come on.
Yeah, good. Right, exactly. Take a risk. Right. So this is the bell curve, but it's also known as the normal curve. And the idea of the normal curve is that everything that is organic, that is not human-made, abides by this distribution. That is, the majority of people, the average, is in the middle, statistically, in the middle, right? And the idea then is that if you stay in the middle, it's safer because more people are there. That is the route that typically gets to a particular outcome. The challenge about being in the middle is that everyone's doing the same thing, so everyone's fighting over the same resources. Even as a company trying to reach an audience or a community of people who are in the middle, everyone's talking to those people, and therefore it is just riskier to go that route. Super noisy, super saturated, very hard to break through. So even as a student who are going to the same job at 3M or at Ford or the Jet Propulsion Lab, whatever you're trying to do, right? The majority of people are going that same route. Now you're fighting, not just here at the school, but around the globe. You're fighting over the same resources, going the exact same path. And when people see your name with the next person after you and the hundreds of people before you, you look just the same. No different. That's the safe route. But when we go the path of least followed, by its very nature, it's novel. By its very nature, the resources are plentiful because no one's there. By its very nature, it leads to different results because its path is quite different. I mean, if you make the slightest change on a parabolic equation, the differential is going to be different, right? The derivative is going to be different, even by the slightest. And what do we know about differentials? Lightweight interactions over a period of time, small changes over a period of time lead to a different outcome. Statistically, quantitatively, that's fact. So that's the first. That's why inherent risk comes with different outcomes. It comes with not being mediocre. The second part is just qualitative. The second part is more emotional. And I think the idea is this. There is nothing worth having that doesn't require you moving out of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone, your biological wiring is to keep you safe. Your brain is telling you, don't speak up, don't raise your hand, don't dress differently, don't act differently, don't do this, they'll think you're stupid, don't do that.
You might not eat, you might not have a house, you might not have money.
Exactly, and in your mind, I mean, our brains are wired very much like it was sub-Saharan African days, right? Like very small changes in the brain over all that time. So we work with the exact same hardware, so our bodies respond to the world like it always has. So the idea of being different means that we might die, right? Like if everyone in the clan goes to the left and you go to the right,
you're on your own. Yep. Exactly. Lion might eat you.
That's right. So your brain is telling you, don't do that so you can survive. Your job of your brain is to predict outcomes so you stay alive. That's your brain's job. So biologically, your wiring is telling you, please do not do that. Don't let people know that you're stupid. Don't let people know, don't let people know anything. Just follow what everyone else is doing and you will be safe. You have to overcome everything screaming at you, telling you, don't do this. If you are to break out of what we statistically know leads to mediocrity.
Which is why I know so many of you signed up for this class and to come learn about entrepreneurship because you want to take that other path. part of this class is about demystifying for you what that means.
Yeah.
Part of also what you're talking about here with fighting against that wiring and that hardwired nature that we have is the nature of otherwise working off of emotion and not working off of the thought that we all just make rational decisions all the time.
Yeah. It's the biggest lie that we tell ourselves. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves, that I'm a rational human being and I make data-driven decisions. No, you do not.
Bullshit.
It's just the biggest lie, right? Like we think biologically, the part of the brain that's associated with decision making and behavior, the same part of the brain is associated with emotions, right? Like it's called the limbic system. And there you have the hippocampus, you have the amygdala where all these memories exist. And as a result, we make decisions based on instinct, what we feel. We're biologically wired to do this. Now, it's hard for us to communicate that because the part of the brain associated with articulation, the neocortex, is also a part of the brain associated with rationality. So I can communicate rational thinking quite easily, but communicate what I feel very hard, which is why our personal romantic relationships get so troubled, right? Like, why do I love my wife? I say something dumb like, because she completes me. Right? But I don't have the language to describe how I feel, but I can describe the rational parts. So we kind of traverse the world thinking of ourselves as rational beings. It's like having a Kirk brain and a Spock brain. Like we think that we are Spocks, but you ain't no Spock. You are a Kirk all day long, where you're just driven by what you emotionally feel, and we use rationality to justify and rationalize the decisions that we've made. And if we understand that, we actually give ourselves a little grace. We give ourselves some permission to go, all right, I'm just gonna do it. Like, it doesn't make sense, but I'm gonna do it. You get a degree from the University of Michigan, College of Engineering. MSE was #1 in the country at the time. I always tell my wife that, remind her that. And you go become a songwriter. What are you doing? It doesn't make any sense, right? You go to a business school. We were #1 in the country that year too. Wherever I go, we're #1. I'm joking. I go to business school, and I go into the music industry. What are you doing? These things just don't make sense rationally. But realizing the North Star, what I was going after, the thing that was like really propelling me forward, was very emotionally driven. And therefore, I had to overcome the fear. I mean, look, to be totally fair, and then maybe I did definitely overlook this part. I graduated from undergrad after 9/11. So the entire market was just blown. It was just nothing. I graduated from business school in the recession. The entire market, it was terrible, right? And I left Apple to go work for an artist. My parents were like, "Are you smoking crack? What are you doing?" We have raised an idiot. This guy is a nutcase. It didn't make sense. All my friends were like, "Hey, just get a regular job working at a CPG company and then figure it out." And I was like, no. Let me jump. You've got to jump, or you'll find yourself in mediocrity. That's just life.
And part of what excites me, at least, and what energizes me, being able to work with students, and I assume it's probably for you too, is that now that we're so far beyond that age, you can look back and appreciate from a rational lens.
Yes.
There's never a better time to jump than where you're at right now. The majority of you do not have responsibilities like you will in 10, 20, 30 years down the road, and you are in a position to take risk in a way a lot of times you won't be able to do as life goes on.
And the best part about it, even if you fail, you have the best story to tell. You're the best story. Because everyone else was, I went to school, then I went to go work here, then I went to go work here, then I went to work there. And you go, I went to school, was like, nah, I ain't doing that. I did this instead. And I failed here, and I failed there, and this happened. I had a little bit of luck. And it's so much more interesting. Right? The normal path is normal. And normality is mediocrity.
Love it. We had a ton of student questions that came in before this, but there were a couple that really just stood out to me as kind of being pretty special. So I wanted to try to see if we can get to those here. Meredith Doan, are you in here? There you go.
Hey, Meredith.
Had a great question.
Oh, Meredith's going to ask you. I
Yep.
love this.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good. So, in your article, How to Choose a College That Will Pay You Back, you mentioned the long term financial benefits of college, like the network. How have you utilized the University of Michigan network? And similarly, how has the institutional cultural capital you've gained from U of M benefited you in your career?
So perfect question to ask. I met my business partner here at the University of Michigan in undergrad. I met my wife in the MBA program here at the University of Michigan during my MBA program. And I got into academia because of one of my professors from the MBA program. I mean, I feel like the Michigan network has paid me dividends over and over and over and over and over again. And we go back to this idea of community. Like when I tell people I go to Michigan, people go, oh, go blue. And it's almost like, well, what can I do for you? There's this implicit social contract that we as Wolverines have. Like, how can I help? And those who don't, you go, you ain't one of us. Like there's an expectation of that. And from a professional, and obviously from a personal reason, I owe this school a great debt, which is why I work here. Right? I mean, I spent most of my life as an adult, since high school in Ann Arbor than anywhere else, and it's always been affiliated with this place.
To supplement that, the one thing I would add on is that notion of the social contract that's implicit. You are the chief benefactor of that.
Oh my gosh.
You are essentially a charity right now. Everybody wants to help you. Everybody wants to give to you. All you got to do is make the ask and raise your hand. I guarantee people will take time to make the call, to have lunch with you, to do whatever in a way that they will not do as you get beyond school and you get.
That's right. When I started the MBA program, I knew I wanted to work at Apple. It's the only company that I recruited for. So I went through the database at Ross of Ross alum and I looked at everybody who ever worked at Apple. And say of 30 of them, I reached out to all 30 and heard back from like 17 of them. And I had a conversation with them, 30 minutes, just tell me about your career. Like, how did you get here? How did Michigan prepare you for that? Just so that I had the vernacular, had the nomenclature, had the, sort of the nuances of what it means to be a part of the Apple community, so that once I actually got an interview, I felt like one of them. I seemed to be like one of them. And many of those turned into, let me introduce you to someone else, which let me introduce you to someone else, and so on and so on and so on.
Thank you. Great question in there.
Yeah, really good question.
Mohammed, I think you've got a question as well.
Mohammed, where are you?
Oh, right over here on the left.
Hi, I'm Mohammed Ali Asri. My question to you is, do businesses have the power to initiate or help patterns of cultural change? In essence, do businesses have the power to direct cultural norms in the directions that they choose?
For society as a whole. For society at large.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Because the idea about culture is that there is consumption culture, there's organizational culture, and there's societal culture. And all these things are driven by the exact same mechanisms. And that is the beliefs, ideologies, social facts, these are artifacts, behaviors, language, that constitute a group of people. Those things inform not only what we buy, but they inform where we work, if we work, where we go to school, if we go to school, how we vote, how we abide by certain policies. These things are all intertwined. So much so that, I'd say that consumption is a cultural act. Like all the things what you wore today, you wore them because that was acceptable and expected of people like us. And therefore you abide by those things to stay in lockstep with the community to which you self-identify. And those things ripple out to how you vote, right? You see the world a certain way, not because of the way the world is, but because of the way you are. And that's the power of culture, right? Culture is a system of conventions and expectations that demarcate who we are and govern what people like us do. And because of who we are, we see the world a certain way. That's why for some, a cow is leather, for others, it's a deity, and for some, it's dinner. But which one is it? It's all those things, depending on who you are. And because of those things, we consume the way we consume, we facilitate ourselves or engage ourselves with certain groups of people, and we traverse the world, we navigate the world, we interact with the world, not because of what it is, but because of who we are. So to that end, I would say companies, corporations, institutions, organizations, anyone who is participating in and contributing to the cultural zeitgeist in which we cohabitate, they can influence, they do influence culture, and they have an obligation to give more than it takes.
Great question. I want to touch on one other question, and then we're going to prompt them real quick to give us some feedback. For the students out there, show of hands, how many's going to be graduating here within the next year? Okay, you got a lot. As they're going into job interviews, they've got maybe 3 questions they get to ask at the end of the interview of the company, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that. What are your tips to them to quickly suss out whether that's a culture that they want to join?
Great. So I'll start by saying the worst question to ask is, what's a day in the life for you? Terrible question. Anytime I hear that, I'm like, I'm not hiring you. You're the worst. I would start with like, what do you believe as a company? I know what you do, but what do you believe? How do you all see the world? And if they don't have a good articulation for that, I would be a little suspect. Because if everyone's there because of what they do, then the manner in which that's done is always in service of production, not you as an individual, right? Not you as a part of a community. Is that it's almost like, we are in service of making better boots. Okay, but why do we do that? What's the North Star that kind of brings us all together? And it's, for any collection of people, our connection isn't because we're all endeavoring in some scholarly effort like here at the university, but we believe something. Like we could have went to any school, but we chose this place for a reason. Now some here because it's high ranking, okay, great. But the people who like believe in what the school is all about, they feel like this thing is a part of them. And for the companies that have the strongest cultures, those people are there not because of what the company does, but because of why they do it. They believe in some greater goal. Think of a startup, for example. People doing a startup, they're gathered around a table, 5 folks, 2, 3 folks, right? They're not making any money. In fact, they're probably losing money as they're together. But they're there because they believe. There's something that ties them together, a shared point of view about the world, sort of shared truth about the world, that this thing that they're doing is going to help move it, push it, solve it, do something, right? And the idea is that the company, as the company grows, when you're interviewing people, you're like, who are you? Like, you're not like, are you a good coder? Come work with us. You go, are you one of us? Are you like us? Are you like the founders? Because we're here because we see the world similarly. Do you see the world similarly? And the challenge is that as the company grows, and it grows faster and faster and faster, and the rate at which new people are coming in, it makes it difficult to indoctrinate people into the group. And then people start joining the company. They join it because of the value propositions, because
they got cool. They got
cool.
branding, whatever.
Your 401k is great. You serve dinner, you serve lunch and breakfast, whatever. Like all the perks is why I'm here, not because I believe. And those people, they're the first to jump whenever there's a shinier object. But the people who believe, they're there even when things are down, because they believe. Being there is a cultural act. So when you're engaging in questions for the company, you're trying to suss out, what do you believe? I would ask, what are the stories you tell? Do you tell stories about failure or stories about success? Because that tells me something about how the company thinks about risk. Because if the company talks a lot about, we tried this, but it didn't work, and from that we learned this, you go, oh, this is a company that's actually risk-loving. And they're probably much more innovative than those who are not, right? So what do you believe? What kind of stories you tell, like what the mythology of the company is. And then, of course, I go, what's your vision of the future? Whether it's in the category, whether it's in the industry, whether it's in the world, writ large. Like what's the ideal scenario of the world for you? And as you're sussing these things out, you're essentially taking an inventory and comparing it to your own point of view of the world, the way you see the world also. And you go, are these my people? Do we see the world similarly? If you do, you go, I'm not just finding a job, I'm finding a home. And if you don't, you go, well, I guess I'm just going to be here for a little bit. And there's this thing called the bricklayer's parable, which I think just really kind of captures this. So let's say I see you on the side of the street, and I go, Eric, what are you doing? And you go, I'm laying some bricks. Oh, you have a job. You lay bricks. You're a bricklayer. But if I see you on the side of the street, and I go, Eric, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm building a church. You have a career. You build churches. But if I'm driving down the street and I see you laying bricks, I go, Eric, what in the world are you doing? And you go, I'm building the house of God. Well, you have a calling. Which Eric is more excited about going to work every day? The one with the calling. The one who's there not because of what it is, but because of the purpose that's driving what you do. And the questions that we ask the companies, we should be trying to get to that. Now, I know that there's sort of this fiduciarily driven obligation that, like, I just need a good job. Right? Yeah, you can't knock that. But that's what everyone else is doing. Yeah. The question becomes, what do you really want? And if you want extraordinary results, then you have to do the extraordinary.
100%. Okay, students, pull out your phones wherever it might be. Here's the prompt for you. You click that on back there? Okay, you got 30 seconds. All right, input real quick, one word, a startup or a company at large that you want Marcus's opinion on for their marketing, their branding, some kind of story, their perspective. You got an expert on the stage right here. Throw it out there. Let's see who you come up with. No Stanley up there? I'm kind of shocked.
This is fine.
Everything's Stanley.
Google's, right, Tesla, yeah. I think Tesla's winning.
It's looking like it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not winning in Chicago right now, though.
That's right. Good grief. Yeah, it's batteries. Batteries are struggling. I think it's a clear winner here.
Yeah, let's roll on Tesla.
All right. So Tesla. I think Tesla is a shining example of what it means to innovate. Well, actually, no, to innovate, that is, create inventions that meet value from the market. A tremendous job of challenging the dominant logic of how you go to market, right? If I'm a car company, I need car dealers. Can't get to car dealerships, fine, we'll go in malls. Wow. Challenging.
Broke the distribution model.
Exactly. Complete challenging all the dominant logics of the category. Tesla does hardly do any paid media. None of it. It's very, 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 very minimal. Now, thankfully, you have a founder, CEO, not founder, but you have a CEO who is his own sort of media, or form of media. But before Elon was as divisive as he was, right? He was essentially preaching the gospel. And the gospel of Tesla is, what are the possibilities of an electric world? They just so happen to make cars, but also make batteries, and also make solar panels, and also make all these things, right? The possibilities of an electric world is sort of the North Star, the conviction of the brand. And the people who rally around Tesla, it's not because of the value propositions, which are compelling, but those differentiations in product are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We're seeing the big three and even other electric vehicles, right? Other electric vehicles that are closing that gap in the product, yet they're not loosening the hold that it has on Tesla fans, because they're not just fans, they're a tribe of people who see the world similarly.
It's a culture.
And the brand becomes an extension of their identity, right? Of course I'm going to drive Tesla because I am this kind of person. Of course you are, right? And the consumption of the Tesla brand becomes an identity mark, an identity project. Think of it this way. My wife and I used to live in New York. We had our first daughter.
60 seconds. We gotta be
Sorry. For our first live in New York, we used to have this little small hatchback car, a VW. And when we had our first daughter, my wife said we needed an SUV. So we made a long list of SUVs that we would potentially buy. There's one SUV we wouldn't even consider, wasn't even on the list, and that was the Toyota RAV4. Why? No shade to Toyota RAV4. Why? Because there's a song by Jay-Z called Run This Town where Kanye, old Kanye, not new Kanye, don't judge me, says, what do you think I rap for? To push a effing RAV4? And there was no way in the world I was going to pull up from my friend's house driving a RAV4. No way at all. It's a good car. It has all the J.D. Power Associates, has all the stuff, right? But because of what the brand culturally meant, there was no way I was driving that car. The same thing goes with Tesla. Tesla's done a great job of framing the brand through a cultural lens that's driven by an ethos and ideology that people are able to invest themselves into because they're extensions of their own identity.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, students. Have a great weekend.
Appreciate y'all.